This time around, we're going to take a look at Microsoft Exchange Server 2019 and the tips and tricks that you need to know. So stay with me. You never know. You might learn something. Greetings, my fellow YouTubers. Welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate you stopping by. This time around, I thought we'd take a look at Microsoft Exchange 2019. And more specifically, I'm going to talk about some of the admin features that I think are really make a difference. Now, rather than you guys going on, let's say, a 5-day training course, what I want to do here is like 20 to 30 minutes and just really get straight to the point with tips and tricks. So I think you're going to learn something here, so definitely stick around. I'd really appreciate your support, by the way, so please help me by giving this video a big thumbs up and hitting that like button. And as always, if you're not a subscriber, we really do like people to go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And as always, I love your comments, questions, and feedback, so please get them down below. So I think without any more jibber jabber, I think it's about time we got into some demos, don't you? So I'm kicking off my demo here in Exchange Server 2019 and the Exchange Management Console. And just a couple of things, again, quick tips. You have got two choices. You can create a new mailbox or what we call a linked mailbox. A linked mailbox is to somebody external. So this might be, for example, if you've got a organization with a number of companies and an employee in a second company, and you have an organizational relationship, you can link a mailbox to that. So that's really useful. Also, you can see here that you can customize things. You can also export your complete list of mailboxes to a CSV file. This is particularly useful in the term of migration as well. All right. Now, the other thing that you can also do is you can connect a mailbox here. So let's say a user left a company and you've got like a redundant mailbox. Well, you can connect a mailbox to a different user. That's kind of cool. In groups, if I go into groups here, you can create 3 different types of groups. So a distribution group is nothing more than just a distribution list, a contact list. A security group is a group that you can assign permissions, but you can also assign mail to. So for example, here is one that I've just created. So I've got a user here I've got a group rather here called sales. And in the group here, you can see that I can assign users, I can assign permissions, I can also assign owners as well. So I can, and this is quite useful, especially if later on you migrate to the likes of Teams, because in Teams, an owner can assign guest permissions and things like that. So you can assign an owner to the group as well. Also, another tip about owners is if an employee leaves a group, then you can potentially get access to that and set permissions. You can also membership approval. So again, you can choose whether you want the group membership to be approved. So when people apply to join a group, you can say, hang on a minute, we need approval, and you need to then go in and approve that. Delivery management. Delivery, do you want to control where folks in the group can send mail? So for example, only to users inside the organization or basically anywhere. And if you say anywhere, you can either say just anywhere or you can restrict by specific domains. That's really useful, actually. That's a very powerful feature. Likewise, as well as membership approval, you can also do message approval as well. So messages sent to this group need to be approved. So if you work in a sensitive role area, this can be quite useful. And you can set up a list of specific senders and receivers who can approve that. Again, membership options, you get a mail address here, so sales@adatum.com. But again, you can add in additional addresses if you want to. And as always, you can delegate permissions to the group. So this is things like if you want somebody to send as a group member or send on behalf of a group member. So there's some really nice, useful things there. Now, staying in recipients, of course, resources. Resources are really useful. So you can either create mailboxes for a room mailbox or a piece of equipment. And you can then use things like the scheduling tool in Outlook to schedule a meeting room or book a meeting room or book a car, or in my case, a bike. So that's really useful, resource permissions. Contacts. So contacts, there are two types of contact that you can have: a mail-enabled contact or a mail-enabled user. So what's the difference, Andy? Well, a contact is somebody external. So it could be a customer, could be a supplier, and you can just create a contact. This means that the user account is not in your database, whereas a mail user is within Active Directory in this case. But the difference is you want the user to be in Active Directory, but maybe he's a contractor and he wants to have an external email address, but he wants to be represented in the directory. That's really useful. Shared mailboxes are awesome. Shared mailboxes, officially you don't need a license. You can work with this in both Exchange 2019 and also Exchange Online, and you can convert any user's mailbox to become a shared mailbox. So for example, if Jean-Luc or Captain Kirk were leaving the organization here, you can see I can scroll down and I can choose whether I want to convert this to a separate mailbox. So you can create shared mailboxes, or you can also convert mailboxes as well. Other tabs here, just tips and tricks that you need to know. Coming into permissions tab is all about roles. And we've got two types of roles here: admin roles and user roles. So the admin roles, this is pretty much what we call RBAC, or role-based admin control. So rather than giving somebody complete Exchange management permissions here, you might want to give them help desk permissions. So they will have a limited setup of roles. Again, if you're familiar with Microsoft 365, you'll now start to see that some of the roles from 365 are starting to come through here. This is a particularly useful one as well: view-only organization management, and it's exactly as it says on the tin. It's read-only. User roles, at the moment you've got something called the default role assignment policy. What does that mean? Well, if I double-click it here, the role assignment policy here shows me basically what the user can and what the user cannot do. So I can go in and I can edit this policy, and I can say, hey, my user, I'm going to give them access to contacts. They can contact distribution groups. They can pretty much do everything. Now, what about if you were in a school and you didn't want that user to have access? Well, what you could do is you could say, I'm going to call this my London RA policy, role assignment policy. Oops, would help if I could spell it correctly. So London RA policy, and I'm going to say, okay, here I want my users obviously to have access to my contact information, my profile information, things like distribution groups, things like custom apps. But you might say, I don't want them to have access to Marketplace, or I don't want them to be able to read other people's mailboxes and things like that. So you can decide, I'm going to take those permissions away. And when I save this, I can then go into, let's say, a recipient here. And in the recipient, I'm just going to go into mailboxes and I'm going to select Captain Kirk. And in Captain Kirk's area, I'm going to click down here into mailbox features and check it out. Look what we have here. You have got something called a role assignment policy, and by default he gets the default role, but I can give him the London role if I want to. So that's a really nice feature. All right, so moving down again, other tips and tricks. Compliance manager, and this is typically where you can for compliance reasons, for example, you may want to put a particular user on legal hold. Now, if you place a user on hold here, what happens is mail continues to flow, everything continues to work, but the user, when the user deletes any content, his recycle bins are never emptied. So if you suspect that somebody is up to no good, this is a very powerful feature. All right. Likewise, do you want to switch on auditing? And we have a number of different audit reports that you can switch on here. I love data loss prevention policies. So data loss prevention policies, particularly powerful in Exchange Online and also Microsoft 365, you can create a DLP policy from a template or from a custom template. So I can simply go into here. I can say, hey, I want to, this is my UK policy for data loss prevention. And let's say I scroll right down here. I like to actually call this data leakage prevention. So things like personal identifiable information or UK financial data. And you can see what's included here. So things like credit cards, bank cards, information like that. And I can say, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that. And what happens now is this prevents data from leaking outside of your company. Just one other little thing here, retention. So again, with compliance, retention policies are super powerful. So by default, we get a default mailbox retention policy. And you can see here we've got something called retention tags. So if I, again, double click this, you can see that this has got a selection of retention tags. So for compliance reasons, let's say you work for a tax authority or you have to pay tax. Of course, we all have to pay tax. Well, tax records have to be retained for a certain amount of time. So what we can do is we've got things like 1 year delete. So the idea is that once you publish this mailbox retention policy, users in Outlook and Outlook Online, they can go into an email, right-click it, and assign one of these retention tags. How cool is that? And more importantly, again, you can create your own retention policy. So again, I'm going to call this my London Mailbox Retention MR policy. Okay, and I can go ahead now and add in some of those retention tags. So I'll add this one, I'll add this one, this one, and this one. Okay, cool. And I now click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So that's now my London mailbox retention policy. And check it out. You can even create your own retention tags. So I can go in here and you can choose the retention tag that you create. Is it going to be applied automatically by a default? Or do you want the users basically to be able to do this? All right. How do I assign a retention policy, Andy? Great question. You go into recipients, you select the user that you're looking for, double click, again, go into mailbox features and check it out. Look, here we see retention policy. So again, I choose my London retention policy and click on save. And it's that simple. How cool is that? All right. So next down is the organization tab, and organization tabs are really about sharing. And what you can create is something called a federation trust. And a federation trust is normally a link to another or external organization. All right. So when you click on that, you can create a federation trust, and for the purposes of things like individual sharing, or let's say organizational sharing for things like calendars. So if you want to share a calendar between a partner company or somebody like that, you can bring them in. All right. Protection. So protection, again, if you're familiar with EOP or Exchange Online Protection, then we also get things like the antivirus and anti-malware filters. Top tip, by the way, if you've got Exchange on premises, you actually get a free license for that. All right. If you're with Microsoft 365, again, you also get that as part of that service as well. So I can go in here, I can edit this policy, and of course, this is my default settings for things like anti-malware. I love this one, by the way. Check this out. If you get malware, notify external senders that their malware has been successfully delivered. Yeah, I'm thinking that's not a good idea. Okay, so that is the malware filter there. This particular session, mail flow, I did a session recently on this, so if you've not seen that presentation, go ahead and have a look at that. It's quite interesting. So I talked all about the different features of how mail flows in and out of your organization. Now, mobile device management, of course, is typically handled on premises by using System Center Configuration Manager, or in the cloud using Intune. But before then, you can still manage mobile device access, especially if it's a corporate device. Now, corporate devices are typically owned by the company, so you can manage corporate devices here. You can add them in, these mobile devices. Now, the key thing to remember about this is they are treated as corporate devices. And once they're in here, if the device is lost or stolen, you can then create a mobile device policy, which basically will wipe that device. All right, very useful. Public folders, I'm not going to cover that. That's so yesteryear, it's so 1990s. The new version of this, by the way, is Microsoft 365 groups. Fully collaborative groups. Absolutely awesome. Just one top tip, by the way, you can convert public folders to become Microsoft 365 groups. Now, I'm going to cover this in a later session, but I just want to mention this just now. Hybrid. So if any of you are still using Exchange Online and you're thinking about, do we migrate across? Do we go into hybrid? Then you have a number of options here. Now, on the subject of migration, and again, I could honestly talk about this for a few hours, but in a nutshell, you can migrate into Exchange Online, or you can move out, all right? So for example, I want to migrate out, so I can do a migration here, and it says, okay, what kind of migration do you want to do? Now, again, depending on if you're using Exchange Online or if you're using Exchange on premises. The difference here when you do a migration here is you can move content to a different database or indeed a separate forest. So one thing to notice, by the way, the migration tab is different when you're in hybrid. Okay. Andy, what do you mean by hybrid? Hybrid is not a migration. Essentially, once you configure the hybrid wizard, Microsoft Exchange Online is seen by Exchange as an additional server on the same network. Now, this is brilliant because it has a number of benefits. Well, first of all, it allows you to move users at your leisure to, let's say, Microsoft 365. And once you move the user, because it's seeing that user as an internal move, the user's configuration never changes. So you don't need to assign them a new email. You don't need to reconfigure Outlook or anything like that. The user just signs in. And what makes this possible, by the way, is Microsoft actually give you an additional license for hybrid. And so when you install this license, essentially, one of the features that we have here in Microsoft Exchange, if I come across to this, by the way, if I just come into servers here, one of the features that we have is if I come into virtual directories, here in the virtual directories, you'll see that we've got EWS. EWS means the Exchange Web Server. And this is particularly important because when you install that new server on your network, what the wizard does is it actually redirects this. This is called the Mailbox Replication Service. And it essentially moves it to this new platform. So the new server essentially acts as a gateway, and basically all your users' mail or all your users' requests go through that proxy, if you will. And it's just saying, hey, your mail is on server B, your mail is on server A, and that's essentially how it works. All right, so the mailbox replication proxy is a really important feature. All right, now, just one very important top tip that I've got to give you here. In this demo, by the way, as you can see, I'm only using one Exchange server. Now, in reality, to be fair, you wouldn't do that. You would probably have 2 or 3 different Exchange servers, and I'm sure that you do. Now, you can see here it shows me the database. So again, it tells me a little bit about the database here, the mailbox database. I can double click that here, and you can see the database itself is mounted, the name of the server that it's mounted on, and in here you can also set up things like maintenance schedules, defragmentation and things like that. Also, you can set things like database limits and warnings here. And also, this is where you can configure an offline address book as well. So that's quite useful to know. Very, very important, by the way, is you can create something called a DAG, a database availability group. So if you had multiple servers on multiple disks, you can basically create a replica of a disk. So if one fails, then you know that you're going to get backed up, and that's really good. All right. So there you go. Just a few hints, tips, and tricks, hopefully, that make you a little bit wiser about Microsoft Exchange. So there you have it, my little collection of tips and tricks in Exchange Server 2019. I really hope that you enjoyed that, and please, if you did, go ahead and help my channel out. Give me a big thumbs up, hit that like button. It really does make a difference. All right, and if you're not a subscriber, we love subscribers here, so go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you'll get notified of any new videos and postings that I do. And as always, if you've got comments, questions, and feedback about this and any of my other sessions, or indeed if there's a session that you'd be interested in me covering, then please, as always, let me know. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. You stay safe. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.